Calvin, Frank, Jeff, really good to be here and have an opportunity. Let's talk about performance management. One of my main focuses is instilling a performance management culture throughout the entire organization. I've always believed that it's one of the most important responsibilities for a manager because so much of performance management is about giving and receiving feedback, and our people are our greatest resource, so they need feedback. We need feedback. I do, you do. So one of the things about performance management in our organization that I think gets exemplified by the nature of the work is that people get confused about the transactional pieces of performance management, which really are more of the traditional check-in, midterm, closeouts. But we performance manage every single day by the way we work, the feedback we give. So let's talk about what effective performance management looks like in your world for your managers in the air traffic organization, in the operation. What does effective performance management look like, and what does ineffective performance management look like? So Calvin, let me go to you first.
Initially, what I think about is the relationship that goes on between the folks. It's very, very hard to have a real relationship or a real conversation about someone's performance if we don't even have a relationship. So at first, what I would say is always try to have that relationship. You want to start by having a relationship, and how do we do that? Well, we have conversations every day. It's an everyday conversation. Performance management is not just transitional, like you mentioned. It's not the different points that we have to hit throughout the check-ins. No, as a matter of fact, it's far from that. It's what we do every day with our folks. When I think about myself at my level, it's the times that I walk around and sit in the office and have conversations with folks. In the operation, it's how we're having conversation. It may just be a pat on the back, great job. That's what it might be today. Or it may be a conversation on the side, how could we have done that better? I think that's where we start effective performance management.
That makes sense to me. What does it look like, Frank, to you? What does effective performance management look like?
So Terry, Calvin really touched on the relationship piece, which I think is just vital. A relationship builds trust between the employee and the manager. And we need to have that trust that we are in everybody's best interest for their professional growth. I think everybody in this room can agree that the FAA is a very complex organization. And with any complex organization, you have to have a rising standard in quality.
Yeah.
We set that standard in quality, and we have to make sure that the conversations and the relationships move forward. And whether it's a daily conversation pat on the back, or a discussion between managers on things that we could have done a little bit better, or when we start taking a look at potential safety drift and how we're going to discuss safety drift and how we're going to improve those services to the flying public, that's what performance management needs to start and end with. It's always trying to improve those services, and that is a commitment to a discussion between two people. And I want to say discussion, I emphasize discussion because it has to be two-way dialogue. The employee, the manager needs to understand the significance of what we do and what we're really trying to achieve with those performance management discussions. That is vital for us to be successful in an agency. And we can't rest on our laurels. How many times do we say we are the gold standard? That's fantastic, but I will challenge any professional coach, any professional manager, rest on those laurels. We start taking steps back. We have to continually challenge ourselves to know we need to constantly improve upon the services that we provide.
And I think providing context as well. It's not enough to say, it's great when somebody says, good job, Frank, but what was good about it, right? Really demonstrating and having a deeper conversation. Jeff, what about
pointing
you?
out specifics.
Exactly, and especially when things could have been better, having those continuous dialogues so that people don't feel like they're being singled out.
Sure.
Jeff, let me ask you, what does ineffective performance management look like?
Ineffective performance management is doing 4 performance records of conference for a year, for never having any relationship built up with your employees. It's not having the buy-in. If you don't have a relationship with your employees, you're never going to get effective performance management because most of the feedback will be perceived defensively.
I'm glad you teed up performance records of conversation, PROCs. I get a lot of questions about PROCs. It's kind of the myth versus reality. So I'm going to go right to the horse's mouth here. So as directors of operations in the East, the Central, and the West, what are your expectations explicitly around PROCs for your managers in the operation?
My expectation is to have my supervisors and my operations managers build those relationships with their employees. And really, performance records of conference documentation is the key to accountability. So without any documentation, how do you A, recognize superior performance? How do you recognize what they're doing well but what they need to improve on? How do you document systemic problems that you need to work on skill enhancement on? And also, if somebody knows what the rules are and continually break those rules, if you don't have documentation to show that they have been trained, they know what the expectations are, and yet they're not following it, that'll lead to the conduct and discipline.
When that's about accountability as well.
That's the accountability piece.
So let me ask you, Frank, do you have quotas on
No.
PROCs?
Absolutely, positively not. There are no quotas. And I would even challenge folks that try to establish a quota that perhaps we're not doing enough performance management. So we must be missing something for us to say we need to have a quota. But the problem is when I've seen the quotas, and we shouldn't be doing them, but when I have seen them, I usually find that they turn into a checking the box exercise, which is the exact opposite of the conversation we just started off with, which is it's a relationship with our employees to build that professionalism and that safety of service. So no, there's absolutely no quotas. And I will also say that we have to have three things when we go into a performance record conference.
Okay, what are those?
Those three things are, it should be about the event. Right? The second thing should be about expectations. After you've had the dialogue, it's the pathway to move forward to improve that performance and what our expectations are.
The average controller works between 800 and 1,000 times in a year. So if you've got 4 pieces of documentation for a whole year's worth of work, does that really reflect that you've got a relationship with your employee? No.
I see the proc as a extension of that relationship.
Right.
So I should be able to look at the proc, and I should be able to tell what kind of person I have here. And it's not going to be one or all. It's not going to be all or nothing. People are complex, and so that's what it's going to look like. If I'm doing a great job of documenting who this person is, that's what we should be able to find out. And most of the time, when we talk about performance management, the person probably has the answer. It's that conversation that brings the answer, the solution out of that person. And you talked about buy-in.
Yes, sir.
How do you get better buy-in than to have the person actually come up with the solution to our issue?
I get feedback fairly often about managers who say, we don't do PROCs in our facility. What would you say to that?
First of all, I would be a bit disappointed because as we're talking about how important this is, obviously without the PROCs, we don't get the feedback that we really need. The second thing that I would think of is, how is the relationship in the facilities? How are we having discussions? What do those conversations look like if we're having them at all? Because if you tell me we're not doing performance management, I get it. Maybe, just maybe, and this is my hope, that we're doing the conversation and we're actually conducting performance management, but on the other hand, we're not very good at documenting it. And that's what I'm kind of hoping, that it's not that we're missing the boat totally, it's that we need to get better at documenting those discussions and those conversations that we're having.
I think that the CBA gets convoluted into performance management and PROCs. Managers, frontlines, OMs thinking, I can't do that because the CBA prohibits me from doing that. How do you even address that with your managers to help clear the air on, no, it's your responsibility and it doesn't prohibit you?
I've been lucky because my RVPs are on the same page with me and they understand the need for performance management and documentation. And I've actually made it a requirement of all my team to have those recorded conversations, and it doesn't have to be negative. You know, to Calvin's point, the one thing I wanted to add on the PROCs, if you think about this, we've had an incredible amount of turnover in the last 5 years because of retirements, and we're going to continue to do that. And if we don't have documentation, if I'm gone tomorrow and Frank comes in to replace me, he knows nothing about my employees. It's kind of like a history of your employee, and it's not a negative or positive, it's just here's the coaching, here's how they are, and here's their strengths.
Well, and when you have that opportunity, let's say towards the midterm or the end of the year, where you're really looking back for a period of time, I'm giving you feedback. If you don't have something to pull from a file to say, you know what, great job, or you know what, great job, but there were a couple things here, I know you're working on it, I'll continue to support you. How do you have a meaningful conversation? And when you actually have something to pull out and refer to, that helps people know that, you know what, they care about me. They're invested in me and my success, in the safety of this organization.
You know, I read a great deal of operational issues. That's what we do, right, at this level. And what I do from time to time is I make sure that if I see something that was great, this was great, I don't assume now that that performance management was done. I'll push that back down and say, let's make sure that we talk to the person, have a conversation, and document this great performance. At the same time, I will do it the other way too. But we just want to make sure that all of these things are captured so we have a very expanded view of the person that we're talking about.
Providing feedback is one of the most important things that we can do for our employees, our coworkers, and for ourselves too. So I always challenge managers at every level to be getting the same from their manager about themselves. So I do believe it's something we need to continue to work on. I know we can do better, we're getting better, and I think that this will help to ensure the success overall. But we do have we've got a new and a younger workforce, and we've got to teach effective performance management because they'll be sitting in your seats one day, and I hope they're sitting in my seat one day. So we've got to get this done. It's just that important.